Hey, how's it going, guys? So we're back with more Star Citizen videos. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We're going to be checking out another video by the TheAstroHistorian. So shout out and credit goes to the TheAstroHistorian for the video. And this one's called the AEGIS Javelin Destroyer, Humanities Bulwark. And it's more Star Citizen lore. And so far, a lot of you guys have been requesting me to do a lot of ships besides the commercials, just like videos that talk about the ship. And so far, the TheAstroHistorian has been my source. A lot of you guys have been requesting the RSI Perseus, which I did, and I've been finding ships on my own and just seeing what the TheAstroHistorian has to say. So I'm gonna be watching the Aegis Javelin Destroyer. Another video I have saved is the Drake Vulture, and we'll just see how it goes. So without anything else, let's just jump right into it.
My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to the TheAstroHistorian. This is a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Today we'll be talking about the frontline anchor of the UEE Navy in the world of Star Citizen, the sword of humanity itself, the Aegis Dynamics Javelin. But before we get started, I'd like to thank y'all for your continued support. We have over 17,000 subscribers and rising, so if this is the second time you've watched one of my videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified when these are released.
Already did.
That being said, let's learn about the most versatile capital ship in the UEE fleet. The story of the Javelin is the story of humanity's contact with the Vanduul. Shortly after the first contact with the species in 2685, Ileana Mezer, aka Mezer VI, used this incursion by the belligerent species to promote a wartime footing. Up until this point, the UEE Navy had been heavily reliant on cruisers and battleships as the main bulk of their forces. While they had impressive defenses and firepower, they were slow and cumbersome, hard to rapidly deploy into a war zone, especially against an enemy which favored raids over traditional military conflicts like the Vanduul. So Ileana proposed a multi-purpose destroyer, which packed a significant punch but could rapidly deploy to a threat while also easily pivoting to other roles to fill gaps in the fleet. To no one's surprise, Aegis Dynamics was given a no-bid contract to build this new destroyer. It was seen as the first modern destroyer and required a massive overhaul of everything from shipyards to component construction. An ambitious timeline was set of 18-month design phase, built at the new modernized Aegis shipyards on Io, starting in 2686. The process was far more than just building a new destroyer to counter the Vanduul threat, but one designed to overhaul the aging facilities and develop new techniques for newer ships to be built after the Javelin.
So far, most of the videos I've been seeing about the UEE Navy and new ships being built, it seems that the Vandal threat has been the pivotal moment why this happened. Because the Vandal are more powerful, they're more skilled. Well, I don't want to say more skilled, but they're strong and everything. So the UEE realized that they need better ships, they need more powerful weaponry and technology. So it would make sense why it caused them to start looking into more advanced and modern technology and try to weed out the aging ships and technology. So I just want to say it seems that the Vandal threats seem to be the pivot where the UE Navy pretty much revolutionized.
Incredibly, the process almost managed to work, with the first 11 Flight 1 Javelins being spaceworthy in that 18-month time, with only minor design aspects still undecided by their launch. In fact, the only major controversy of the ship's construction centered around the paint for these first 11. The Imperators wanted a flashy paint scheme for these first ships to show off to the public, while the Navy was experimenting with role-specific camo schemes they wanted to introduce with the new ship. In the end, the ships were split, 4 being painted pearlescent white and gold highlights for the Imperator, 2 olive drab bombardment destroyers, 3 stealth black raiders, and a pair of gray fleet support ships.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. I mean, the amount of paint that would go into just into one ship takes a very long time to paint, and it's very expensive. And also on top of that, to maintain it, because after it goes out and experiences combat or just times go by, then it needs to be repainted. So that's going to take some time and money. But I didn't think that was going to be a huge issue with this one.
While in the end the camo schemes were found to be not as effective as the Navy hoped, the Imperator paint job came to symbolize the Mezer era, for better or worse. What really made the Javelin stand out compared to other capital ships of its time was just how flexible it really was. UEE Javelins are named after human weapons, with the first prototype being the UES Javelin. All Flight 1 Javelins were modular and could be refitted at dry dock fairly quickly to change its role.
Man, look at all the
In
turrets
the
on the
past,
side.
each role would require its own custom-built ship, but with the modular ability of the Javelin, it could now perform 6 different distinct roles. With Vanduul raids coming more frequent, the Fleet and Commerce Escort configuration was designed to operate individually or as part of a small escort fleet, being far more independent of the fleet support ships, but still being able to operate in small squadrons when needed. As the goal was to eventually counterattack the Vanduul, the Convoy Raider configuration was designed to operate in long-range strikes deep behind enemy lines, effectively making this configuration a privateer variant. The Recon and Force configuration was fitted with extra armor and weapons to punch its way through enemy lines, while also being stripped of a lot of its valuable assets out of the ship to make its possible loss less risky. The Command and Control configuration was equipped with a full suite of sensors, communications, and monitoring stations to allow it to act as the nucleus of a small battle group, or back up fast flagships as needed. Additionally, because of this configuration's sensors and the ship's speed, it could act as a search and rescue platform for after-action situations. The Planetary Bombardment configuration was designed more as a support version to help larger cruisers. However, the configuration did have much better targeting software, which allowed for more surgical strikes from its weapons on space and ground-based installations, while also lending its impressive firepower to any fleet-based planetary bombardment. The last configuration of the Flight 1s was an armored transport, which was also the rarest of the configurations, as its primary role was VIP transport. It should be noted that Imperator Ileana Mezer only ever traveled aboard Javelins, but she was the exception to the rule. The first 5 Javelins to make it into military service created the UEEN's 8th Destroyer Squadron in 2690. While the Javelin was the first UEE destroyer and was the first ever destroyer squadron, the designation was chosen to confuse enemy intelligence, as this period in UEE history was particularly paranoid about alien influence in the Empire. The squadron saw its first operation that year during a search and rescue for a civilian freighter thought to have been captured by the Vanduul. Though it turned out to have simply suffered a system failure and drifted off course, the squadron was still awarded its first action star.
Wow, but starting to get paranoid with anything alien related. So if a ship just runs out of fuel, they're gonna send like a whole squadron out there thinking it's like a Vandal threat or things like that. But either way, as you mentioned, this ship is very versatile, it's flexible, and can support many needs. I mean, with it carrying a fighter, it can send out a search and rescue, as he said. The turrets on the side and guns, so it could be a great support ship, or it could be a frontline assault ship. So, I mean, it's a really good design, and I'm glad that they added this into the fleet.
The first combat the Javelin saw was 2 years later, in 2692, when a Javelin raider with a few escorts located and engaged a Vanduul fleet tender and its escorts of corvettes. The result was astonishing. The Javelin dominated the battle, with all the Vanduul ships destroyed or forced to flee, while not a single casualty was cited by the UEEN. The entire operation lasted only 15 minutes. From 2690 to today, Javelin production has never ceased. In fact, the same basic structure of the ship has remained the same for over 200 years.
Wow.
However, the internal design tweaks and upgrades done bit by bit since the first Javelin ones were launched has not stopped, meaning a Javelin produced in 2740 would be entirely different from one produced today, despite the exterior looking more or less the same. The first major design update of the ship was in 2790, marking a century of service of the Flight 1s.
So the exterior looks the same, but inside is upgraded.
Team, which bypassed AEGIS itself and focused on improving the modularity and overall interior space of the ship. Before Flight 2s, major configuration changes would require several days in a shipyard. The Flight 2s could refit in the field. The Flight 2s were quickly replaced by the Flight 3s in 2820, as the rise of carrier-based bombers capable of taking down capital ships was putting the Javelin in danger. So the Flight 3s were designed with a reworked shield system, point defense turrets, and improved sensors. This would add another role to the Javelin, that of bomber screen for fleets alongside the new Aegis Hammerhead. Since this update, not a single Vanduul bomber has taken out a Javelin alone, proving the effectiveness of this design. The most well-known Flight 3 Javelin is one we have actually seen in-game, both the inside of and while in action.
During
The
Squadron 42?
UES Warhammer. Built in
Warhammer.
2832, the ship was assigned to the 2nd Fleet, 6th Battle Group, close to the Vanduul front. One of its early encounters with the Vanduul was on June 25, 2861, when Vanduul raiders ambushed the Warhammer and managed to slip boarding spikes by the point defense systems to board the ship. 5 off-duty crew members were killed almost instantly, but the crew would eventually fight them off and claim victory. In one of the most famous actions of its history, the Warhammer was present
Razor
at the
Maniac.
fall of Caliban,
Manic?
when on July 7, 2884, it was one of the only capital ships in the system and was covering the withdrawal of civilians and naval forces. Putting itself between the approaching Vanduul and the fleeing ships, it reportedly never stopped firing its guns for the entire day. Gunners reported their sweat sizzling as it fell off of them from the intense heat buildup of the sustained fire.
Damn, that's
After
crazy.
the battle, the heat was found to have been so intense that it physically warped the hull. These observations led to improvements of future Flight 3s. Proving the
Bro, that is crazy. The guns never stopped firing, and the gunners, dude, I'm just surprised the gunners didn't even die of heat stroke or anything like that. And it got so hot, it warped the ship's hull. Dude, you know how hot it has to be just to warp that thing? So I guess I guess they would learn from that, and they would try to make the ship more fire resistant and heat resistant. So that way they could still fire their guns, but however, ensure that the ship's hull would not warp or the integrity would not be lost. And on top of that, they got to look after their gunners too. Because like I said, if I'm going to be firing a turret all day and it gets to the point that I'm like, the sweat is like sizzling and everything, you know how hot it is. I'm going to stop firing the gun.
Javelin's flexibility, the Warhammer would then bounce between numerous roles and fleets, including aiding in the reclamation of the Nexus system from its pirate overlords. The ship is probably most well known to the residents of the Stanton system as being the main UE Navy presence in the system. Stationed out of Jericho Station, the Warhammer, under Captain Metcalf, was present during the Xenothreat incursion into Stanton of 2951, scoring over 70 kills, including several capital ships with the aid of local CDF forces.
Wait, did he say
Resulting
70
kills in the threat incursion into Stanton of 2951, scoring over 70 kills.
70.
including
Oh, I thought you
several
said
capital
17.
ships
My
with
bad.
the aid of local CDF forces. It has also participated in local Invictus celebrations, giving public tours of the ship at various ports in the Stanton system.
Oh,
In
yeah.
2810 and 29.
I think I did watch a Javelin tour by Morphologists, like looking inside the ship, and I really enjoyed that video. So if you guys haven't already, go check out Morphologist. He did a Javelin tour inside the Javelin interior and everything.
15, the Flight 1s and 2s were fully retired, but the sheer volume of Javelins built meant that there was far too many to keep and maintain in mothballs. So with the passage of the Militia Mobilization Act, the UEE began to sell these destroyers to the public at an extremely limited basis.
That's
This was
crazy.
an extremely controversial move, as
Yeah.
many worried about giving capital warships to civilians, while others countered with concerns over military cost and the threat of the Vanduul looming while these perfectly good warships sat idle. The Navy famously was against the move, and as a political
would too.
statement, updated their war books with the Javelin silhouette as a possible threat the same day as civilian sales began. The Javelin is one of, if not the, most effective warships against the Vanduul that humanity has ever built.
Yeah, but here's the problem. If you start selling that to the public and the public decides to like create their own militia or declare like independence, then that's going to be an issue. So it may be good against the Vandal, but that means it's also good against humanity as well. So that is really dangerous. In my opinion, I would have been against that. I mean, I'd rather have the ships sit idle instead of giving it to the public and having more potential threats and enemies. I mean, yeah, I mean, the idea of just like selling some of these things, not just the Javelin, but some of the ships, other ships, like to the public is very questionable in my opinion, because basically you might be supplying an enemy militia or pirates.
It has constantly proved, time and again, that its unique combination of firepower, armor, and speed to be the most potent combination in modern naval warfare. Its flexibility made it likely one of the most popular and common ships in the Navy, from anchoring patrols and escorts to supporting massive naval fleets. While the Flight 3s will soon be headed to the boneyards, with no Flight 4s yet designed, it is clear that the Javelin will remain a force to be reckoned with for generations to come. Thanks for watching. I'd like to thank those patrons on screen now, whom, without their help, none of this would be possible. If you want to join them, the link is in the description below. For as little as $5 a month, you can get early access to videos, including a timed exclusive covering the entire history of the Star Citizen universe, whose first 2 episodes have been released to the public. Check them both out now to see what $5 a month will get you. For now, let me know what you think about the Sword of Humanity in the comments below. And as
Sword
always,
of
remember,
Humanity.
AEGIS ad Astra.
So it's great to see the Javelin again. Like I said, I did see the Morphologist video of the tour of inside the ship. But however, I did not know it was called the Sword of Humanity. But however, what I really like about the design of it is like how it's like the tip is like pointing kind of like a javelin. And also on top of that, how versatile it is. It could support, it could attack, it has ships inside. It can carry its own ships and things like that. But first time I saw that, I don't know if it was the engines or something like that. I may be saying this wrong. It kind of looked like the Polaris design in a way. And on top of that, the amount of guns that is on the side. I believe this, I do remember this ship being in Squadron 42 gameplay. I don't know if it was the ship that we were on, like from the point of view, first person point of view of the character we were playing. But on top of that, what just like really threw me off was the story he said about the guns didn't stop firing for an entire day, and the amount of the sweat was able to sizzle off the gunners, and the fact that the hull was warped. That is crazy. I mean, it sounded like the ship almost destroyed itself just because of overheating. But anyway, this is a really great video, and as always, shout out and credit goes to the AstroHistorian for doing an amazing job as always. But anyways, that's all I got for today about the Aegis Javelin destroyers. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that notification bell so you know when I drop another video. And also shout out to all my members, subscribers, viewers. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for your support, guys. I really do appreciate it. So without anything else, I'll see you guys next time.